Hello everyone! Hi, I am back and today we are going to do a little bit of a special video. I'm going to talk about my favorite books of 2018. I know I don't normally do this kind of stuff, but I really want it. So if you're new and you don't know me, my name is Clara and this is the Ink Path, the place where I talk about books and about the books I read. And I do it in English and in Spanish. My actual real mother tongue is Spanish, but I love chatting in English, as you can probably see. And I read both languages, so I thought to do a bilingual channel. You are invited to stay, so you can click like and subscribe and comment in the section down below in the comment section. But of course this works this way. I leave you all the social media that I have so you can find me, and also I leave you the Amazon wishlist that I actually have so you know more or less what I'm looking for. Alright? Okay, so I don't have any script for this one, which is a rare kind of video, so maybe this is a little bit random, but I was thinking of doing a top 5 of 2018 now, although as you can probably tell at the end of the video there's a little bit of a trick here. I'm going to cheat a little bit, but as I don't have any script, I was thinking about writing or talking from the perspective of the emotion. So I'm going to start talking about the classic that I love the most, which actually I read early in the year. I think I read it in around January or February, and it's actually Emma by Jane Austen. If you are here for a while, you will probably know that I love Jane Austen, although I read only 2 novels by her, and a third one I listened it in a dramatization, a radio dramatization form, but I want to reread it in physical book form. I read Pride and Prejudice several times, twice or 3 at this point. I read Sense and Sensibility, and I listened to the BBC dramatization of Mansfield Park, and I love the 3 of them, but there's one novel in particular that I was a little bit unsure about, and that was Emma, because all the adaptations that I watched until recently, in all the portrayals of Emma, I always thought that Emma wasn't interesting enough, because she was practically perfect. She didn't have any obstacle to overcome as Lizzie or Eleanor or Marianne or Fanny, but I was entirely wrong. Right now I consider Emma, if not, probably my favorite Jane Austen novel, basically because it demonstrated me how wrong I was, how deceiving the idea of other personalities are, which is basically one of the plot points of Emma. I'm not going to get into detail. I will leave the review down below for you to watch if you want, but I love it because it actually it's more grounded. It's a novel more grounded, and you can actually see more complex characters and more well developed, so you have a complete arc. In the case of Emma, you have the spoiled little brat in here, and then you have the woman that she ends up being at the end of the novel. So you have her whole arc drawn in this novel, and I love it. I know that for some Jane Austen may be a little bit kind of only seeing the romantic side, it might be too sweet, but I actually consider Jane Austen quite a critic of her own time. Actually, she used romance in her novel to find the vehicle to do that analysis, that critical analysis of her own society, and I feel that with Emma, the critic or the analysis that she does is the most savage of all, so I adore her way of writing that. So my favorite classic is Emma by Jane Austen. Following, I would like to talk about my favorite science fiction, I would say. Not because it's science fiction, because I barely read that, but because of the powerful message that it has. The most impactful book that I read was The Power by Naomi Alderman. If you haven't read it, I recommend you very, very strongly that you do. I consider it science fiction because it deals with a problem in the planet where it's kind of nowadays society, and at some point women develop a kind of tendency to electricity, to produce electricity with their hands, and this changes everything we know. And I remember that when I was reading it, the first half, I was like, this is cool, this is kind of science fiction weird, but I love it. And then things go downhill, not in the sense that it's bad, but in the sense that it explores really, really dark scenarios where later on, thinking about it, I still think about this book, and I recognize this book as a way of making a photograph of our society, and by reversing it, by presenting a different scenario, and by making it like stronger and more complex to handle, because the kind of spontaneous electricity thing is not something common. The author, for me, is highlighting elements of our society that are very, very problematic, and that leads you to reflect on how we should treat these behaviors. I'm being very vague, but I leave you the review down below. And I love how critical a book can be, and I still think about the critical aspects of the more highlighted aspects of The Power by Naomi Alderman, and I really adore it. On third case, I would love to mention an audiobook that has led me to the place I'm here. Well, it's not properly an audiobook, but I'm going to include it in the audiobook kind of format. In third place, I want to talk about the radio dramatization done by BBC 4, I believe. I will have to check, but I think it's BBC 4, Radio 4 actually. They did, at the beginning of the year, they did a radio dramatization of not Good Omens, sorry. Good Omens is the book I'm reading now. They did a radio dramatization of Anansi Boys. And I remember my former flatmate and one of my best friends, she told me that she adored this book in particular by Neil Gaiman. It's her favorite. But I never got the chance to get my copy. So when I discovered that it was actually for free on the BBC kind of Radio 4 player, I could actually listen to a dramatized version of. I fell in love with the story, I fell in love with the folklore of the story, and it was very funny. I really had a great time. And the reason why I'm mentioning it as an audiobook form is because last year I started reading or listening to audiobooks, but I wasn't very sure if it was my format of reading that I preferred over others. However, this year I found audiobooks or radio dramatizations very helpful, because with work and with the PhD I wasn't very focused to actually read from the page, and actually I had a really bad time. I had a lot of anxiety and second thoughts, because every time I sit down to read, I thought I should be actually doing work or doing the PhD. I had other more urgent stuff, and every time I let myself to stop and enjoy, I was actually feeling very guilty. So with the audiobooks, although sometimes I had to sit down and pay attention to the story, I could actually do both things. I could work on the PhD and then listen, having this on the background and listen to the story. So I found audiobooks very helpful this year, and Neil Gaiman was Anansi Boys by Neil Gaiman was the best first example of that, because I listened to several after that and I enjoyed them all, but this is like the beginning of the year. And also I am highlighting Neil Gaiman because although so far we still have 4 days to finish the year and I don't think I can reach my 50 Goodreads goal, I am about to, I hope I can finish Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and I'm really enjoying the book. I'm really close to the end and I hope I can finish it before the year ends. And I'm talking a lot about Neil Gaiman here because basically I believe this is the year I reconnected with his writing and his stories, because I listened to Anansi's Boys and also I read Norse mythology, which I loved. And now I'm reading Good Omens, which he co-wrote with Terry Pratchett, which was also great. Funny enough, this is my first book by Terry Pratchett that I read. So far I think I'm going to pick more books by him as well on his own path. So if you have any Terry Pratchett recommendations and the order I should read them, because I know there's a saga of books that are mixed and there are huge number of books, you should recommend me your favorites down below in the comment section. More books I want to recommend. This is the third, I think. Yes, this is the third. The fourth book I want to talk about. Let me check the Goodreads challenge page. I want to talk about one author that I already talk about a lot in this channel, but I feel like I should point out one of the latest novels I read by her that is only available in Spanish, but if you are like level mostly intermediate, I think you will be okay. I want to talk about La Costa de Alabastro by Victoria Álvarez. This is a novella, a kind of shorter novel that she has wrote. It's a kind of a scary short novel set after the Second World War, and I actually adore it. It's quite dark and scary, and it was a delight to read it, even though I was so immersed in the story that I could actually hear what the main character was hearing in certain sense, and that was very unsettling. You know, I adore her books. I adore her books because her prose is very precise and very fluent and also very dedicated, so you feel like you're inside the story. It's so rich, the way of her way of storytelling, her prose, that you could actually I don't know. This story, I don't have a review for this one though, but I will post it as soon as I can. All the reviews that I mentioned, all the books that I mentioned before, the reviews are down below. But in this one, this is the story of a nurse that goes to a part of France, and she goes there to take care of a child, an ill little girl. And when she goes there, things start kind of going wrong in the house. There's a lot of things going on in the house, but it's like the house is revealing or protesting against this new guest, and things go downhill from there. I love the tension that the author managed to create, taking into account that the story is actually this long. so she had to cover the whole arc of a full novel. Normally she writes quite chunky books, so having a novella of her was kind of a interesting thing. And I say that her prose is very rich because in that kind of space she managed to introduce the characters, develop the action, huge action, more psychological action than anything else, but she managed to get you into the story, get to know the characters. It has a lot of twists and turns, and the ending, oh my god, that ending changes everything. I love how precise it was, because as I said, I had the feeling I could actually sit down and be in that house with the cold and the snow, and yeah, just marvelous. I just had that feeling, and you could actually see she was enjoying very much the story. And I adore this kind of transporting element of this sort of story, even though it was scary as hell and I couldn't read it when it was night because it was too much for myself. I'm a very scary kind of person and I adore it. Lastly, the last category I want to highlight is the best book of 2018, and because I normally love doing kind of tricks, I have to pick 2 books for that, but I will explain to you why. I've read so many books this year that I feel wrong picking only one when I read from several categories or genres. So I have decided to pick one for YA books, basically from young adult section, and other one for the adult fiction as a general term. And as you may probably tell, my pick for the best YA book that I read in this year, in 2018, is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I am not very kind of contemporary kind of reader, and I remember that when I started listening to this book in English, which in my opinion is the best way to read it or to enjoy it, because the narrator does all the voices and she is phenomenal. I was crying my heart out most of the time, and I love how the story was told with her voice. It was brilliant. It was phenomenal. Well, having said that, I am not very a contemporary kind of reader, YA contemporary kind of reader. I discovered that with The Hate You Give, this was the exception to me. Not only because it treats a very unfortunate and very relevant topic nowadays that it shouldn't be, as to kind of the death of black people at the arms of police, or kind of police brutality, or this kind of wave that has risen in the last months with the Black Matters movement and all. This book is a reflection on that topic, center in the life of this protagonist called Star, who witnessed how one of her best friends is actually killed by a policeman, and the consequences that episode of her life has on the people around her and on herself. I leave you the review down below, don't worry. But I love this book, not only because the message that it has, or the emotion that it actually has, and it has affected me so much. But in this case, I love it because I have a beautiful experience with this story, and I'm going to talk or to mention a tiny fragment that is not spoilery at all, because it's just a moment that is not relevant or spoils anything about the plot itself. I'm going to leave a little anecdote here. while I was listening to this story, I normally use audiobooks before going to bed, so I'm relaxed and I can actually go to bed. With this one I was going to bed sobbing, but that's a different story. And there was a point in this book where Star is talking with her friends from a school, which are different from the friends that she has in her neighborhood. And this school, she goes, she has a group of friends that are not black, are from different ethnicities and races. And I remember that the white friend that she has, just happens to be white, makes a comment about her because Star is very angry and she doesn't get why it's so upsetting about all that is happening to her to be so angry. And she makes a comment that initially I just overheard, and I didn't understood the comment itself. It was just a comment, and Star just exploded just like that. She was completely angry about it. She was furious about what her friend just said, and I stopped and rewind the audiobook a little bit and listened carefully again. And I got angry at myself because the comment, it was about how angry she was, and Haley, I think it was Haley, she said, maybe you ate so much fried chicken today. And when I listened to it's something along those lines, I don't remember if it was the actual quote, but I remember that when I listened to the second time, it was like, how can I not sense this? How can I not pick this hurtful comment out? Because that's very racist. That's very hurtful to black people in this case. As if all that Haley had in her head about black people is that they actually love fried chicken. And I was like, hold on, please, if I haven't noticed it, if for me it was just a normal comment, maybe I actually did this thing to someone else without even noticing it. And I got so angry. I don't know, it made me think quite a lot, and I love that. I love that books teach me how to be a better person, as I hope, or I think the Hey You Give has done to me. And on the adult section, I may say that my favorite book was actually a recent one that I read, which is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. That if you like Shakespeare or thriller or dark academia, which is basically, in my opinion, a subgenre of thriller that deals with students in elite universities or schools, but normally universities, that they have a very knitted kind of friendship group, and they are very dedicated to a field, in this case Shakespeare and theatre, because they study drama in a very expensive school called Delacour Conservatory, where if you study drama you only study Shakespearean works. So you have this group of people that they really get along, and they are in their final year, they're like, they are the best of the best. And at some point one of the characters appears dead, and the rest of the characters, the killer is among them, but they don't know who did it. And I remember that I love this story. I will do a review about it, but what I love about this book is basically how the prose make you feel that you could catch the killer, that you thought one of the friends was the killer and then the other. So the prose and the story toy with you as you were upon placing you in several places and making you think several things at the same time. And I also love how Shakespeare works were integrated into the story, not as a mythical figure to be worshipped, or maybe not completely like that, but as grounded place and as a grounded man, because they used the characters used Shakespearean quotes to insult themselves or making fun of themselves and stuff like that. For them, Shakespearean works are just as important as to be breathing. And I will be more precise on the proper review that I hope I can post sooner than later. But I feel like this book opened a new world to me, and I cannot wait to read more Dark Academia. Her style, El Rio style, is impeccable and close, and you could actually see the characters, and you could. Well, I took months to finish this book, not because I didn't want it to. I wasn't enjoying it, but it was in the other way around. Actually, I was like so immersed in the story that I didn't want it to end. I really didn't want to say goodbye to the characters, and I adore it. So yeah, if you can, you should read any of these books that I mentioned, and I hope we can see each other very soon, maybe next week. Bye!